this is Silent Light, and thank you for joining part two of our book review, The Seven Mountain Prophecy Unveiling the Coming Elijah Revolution by Johnny Enlow. And today, in this topic, we're going to talk about what's needed to overtake the mountains, the need of a revolution, who is Elijah, the until factor, and the seven manifestations of Elijah. So the seven mountains are not the only areas of influence in our society, but it does represent the main areas that we should definitely focus on. Now, according to Deuteronomy 28:13, in order for us to become the head and not the tail at the head of our society, we must take down these seven mountains of influence. So this book is basically a representation of both prophecy and strategy for the assignment and the mission awaiting for the Elijah revolution. So it will come a day when we see prayer fulfilled on earth as it is in heaven. And this book is basically showing a blueprint of this strategy. So the breakdown of what's needed to take down the seven mountains we're going to talk about. So what I want to do first is just basically go over a recap of part one. In part one, we talked about the seven mountains that shape our culture, the Elijah revolution and the mission, the coming of Jesus, how this relates to the world today, and what we can do to help overcome these mountains. So if you did not catch part one, I would definitely suggest that you watch that one before you watch this. If you're not aware of who I am, I'm Silent Light. I consider myself to be a truth seeker, and my goal is to shed the light on the truth, wake up the masses, serve in the army of the Lord, and just simply provide the facts. So the first thing we're going to talk about is power. And one of the things that I touched base on in part one was about the government mountain and what was needed in order to take down this mountain. So when it comes to taking over the government mountain, it's basically going to take a strong level of power that's going to be needed. And this is needed because, of all of the laws and the regulations that you have to overcome when it comes to the government. So having a strong, powerful strategy for this mountain is needed, and basically power is the ability to act or produce an act. Okay, so the second thing is riches. Now, you're going to need riches in order to overtake the economy mountain. And because of the fact that the elites that I mentioned that control this world, they are wealthy and they own most of the wealth in this world. So it would take riches in order to be able to overcome this mountain. So in other words, it's going to take like a person or an organization that has the riches and boldness to overtake these elites that are controlling mountains. Now, when it comes to wisdom, that's going to be needed in order to take over the education mountain. And it takes a lot of wisdom, as the education sector will have to be relearned according to God's standards. So we'll later go into more details about specifics in the history and more in regards to the education mountain. When it comes to the family mountain, there will be a strong level of strength that's going to be needed in order to overcome the family mountain. And strength is required in order to stick together through thick and thin. There has been so many obstacles that come against the family unit. So we're going to also go into detail about the family mountain and how, to believe it or not, there have been purposely obstacles put in place strategically to impact the family unit, especially in the Black community. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, when it comes to the religious mountain, it's going to take honor in order to take over the religious mountain. So it's going to take a strong level of faith and honor to overcome this mountain. Religion is a very touchy subject, and people are very loyal to their religion. But also keep in mind, religion is known to be man-made. So just keep that in mind again. And there are many things that we may need to see that we may not have been aware of. We also may not have fully understood it in its full context that was given to us from others who did not have our best interests at hand. So part of the Great Awakening is seeing religion for what it is versus having a true and full understanding of spirituality, which is ultimately the key. So we'll touch base more on this subject as well later. So, in order to overcome the celebration and arts and the entertainment mountain, we're going to need a strong level of glory. Glory is required because this mountain specifically deals with celebrities, which tend to lead to idolatry. Glory is required to ensure that God is glorified. And overcoming this mountain is basically you're facing or you're overcoming the Illuminati. And if you're not familiar with this group, then I highly recommend that you research this organization or group, whatever you want to call it. They're responsible for pretty much the celebration, the arts and entertainment industry, which controls a lot of the celebrities for a price. So once you understand like the sacrifices and the type of worship that they do, then you'll have a greater understanding of why you should never worship any celebrities or practice any type of idolatry or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. So when it comes to overcoming the media mountain, it's going to take a strong level of blessing and favor, and having a strong level of discernment is really important when it comes to overcoming the media mountain. And that's just due to the propaganda and the sensationalism that the media pumps out constantly. So having a high level of discernment will definitely help you to see and know the truth. And once you have a greater understanding of who owns the media and what they do as a form of manipulation, you'll be able to discern when watching. So in order to overcome this mountain, it's going to take a huge blessing because this is one of the strongholds that are on most people. You know, people spend so much time on media, so it's so easy to control the perception. So once you understand the people who own it, what their agenda is, then you will not be easily manipulated by the devil's devices that he uses on the media. I also broke down a little bit. I went into more in depth about the media. You can definitely watch that in part 1 if you did not catch it. So what is a revolution? It's basically a drastic and far-reaching change in the ways of thinking and behavior. It's the overthrow of one government or system, and it's a replacement with another. And it's basically a sudden or momentous change in a situation. A lot of people may not be aware of basically what's taking place in this world today. But basically there is a need for a revolution. There's a lot of things that are going on, and if you have your eyes wide open and you're asking questions, something that's taking place right now is just not right. Again, once you understand who these elites are and how they're ruling this world, you'll kind of have an understanding of, what we need to do and why we need a revolution. And so there's some things that's happening behind the scenes that are changing to try to basically reverse the process of ruling out the darkness of this world. So I would definitely recommend that you look into Nasara and Jasara. Keep in mind the media censors a lot of things. So a lot of this information is not in the forefront. It is not on mainstream media. So if you're not going behind the scenes and you're researching on your own, then more than likely you're missing out on key information that's taking place again behind the scenes. So I would highly recommend that you do research on Nasara and Jasara. Nasara is just basically representing a national system that's converting over, and Jasara is just a representation of a global system that's taking place, that's going to take over like a lot of the systems, like the financial systems, basically how this entire world is operating. It's going to go into a new system. So definitely take a look into that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that. So that's why, I'm going to point out information to you, and, I highly recommend that you research and you definitely, use your discernment with the information that I do provide. But I do believe in self-realization and self-knowledge. I can give you all the information and put it in front of your face, but you're never really going to have that true understanding until you go into your own self knowledge and really understanding for yourself, that self realization, because I think that is way more powerful than hearsay. So I highly recommend that you do some additional research. I also highly recommend that you research like the U.S. corporation versus the U.S. Republic and some of the changes that are happening behind the scenes as well. So definitely do some research on that. I would also highly recommend that you research the foundation of who these elites are, such as like George Soros, Bill Gates, Rockefeller, who owns Black Lives Matter, and what Black Lives Matter really is. Of course, the term Black Lives Matter, we do believe in that. Black lives do matter as far as the definition of it. But when you understand the people behind it, of the corporation of Black Lives Matter and who owns the corporation, that's when you really find the truth about this and how they're using Black Lives Matter to basically carry out their own wicked agendas. So I highly recommend that you do research that as well. You can also take a look at some of my playlist information. It has information in regards to basically, some of these subjects. So definitely just please be patient with me. But I am working on building playlists of other content online that shares a lot of this information to help you become more aware of what's taking place in this world, so you can be a part of the Great Awakening if you're not already. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into talking about who is Elijah, and a little bit more detailed information in regards to the revolution and some of the things that we can look forward to in the future. So please stay tuned.